Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm here at the end of the second week of Advent to share another thought with you about the woman named Elizabeth. Let me read again the basic story for this week from Luke chapter 1, verses 5 to 7. In the days of King Herod of Judea, there's a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly order of Abijah. His wife was a descendant of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. Both of them were righteous before God, living blamelessly according to all the commandments and regulations of the Lord. But they had no children, because Elizabeth was barren, and both were getting on in years. Now, we've talked a number of things about the loneliness, and promises of grace, and the worry that Elizabeth and Zechariah must have had after this event. Today I want to talk about one more thing. It's called wonder. And the verse I'd like to read to you is this one from Psalm 65:8. The whole earth is filled with awe at your wonders. Where morning dawns, where evening fades, you call forth songs of joy. Now, if you think about the story with Elizabeth and Zechariah, you know, they did what God wanted them to do. You couldn't blame them for anything. What the scriptures say, they were blameless. They followed everything that God asked them to do. But the one thing that they didn't have was a child. And as I've mentioned before, being childless in the New Testament days and the Old Testament were considered punishments from God. And somehow you must have done something that resulted in you not being able to have a child. And even though they knew they hadn't done anything, people had to have talked. People today like to talk. I told one guy a couple of years ago, I said, "Oh, I hear such and such is happening in your place." And he said, "How'd you know that?" And I said, "Hey, as much gossip as goes on around here, how could I not know?" And he just laughed and he said, "Yeah, I guess you're right. People like to talk." And you know that people around Elizabeth and Zechariah talked. Now, I don't think that they always talked good things. Sometimes I think they said, "Oh, we're so sorry for you. We know your heart must be broken," and things like that. But other times I think they just said, "Boy, there's something they're not telling us. There's got to be something they're hiding." And, and, and all those years of wondering why God didn't allow them to have a baby had to have, shall we say, worked on them. But this passage from Psalms 65 says the whole earth is filled with awe at your wonders. Now, this is talking about things, the other's talking about a verb. But it says the whole world is filled with things that God does, and we wonder about so many of them. Think about your own life. How many things today do you question? Why this, or why not that, or how come this, or well, look at them, God. It's part of being human, I think. We tend to think that we should know all the answers, and we can't, and we don't, and we never will. And so here this angel comes to Elizabeth and Zechariah, and they have to wonder, why now, God? We're so old. All of our good years are gone. How are we going to work this out? Why did you take so long? And that is just like you and my life. We're not so different, and they're not so different. God seems to work on a timetable that at times is very difficult to understand. It's mind-boggling. How can this be? What is he thinking? But yet, as this passage said, it's the world is full of these things. The setting sun, the rising sun, all lead us into songs of joy. When we focus in on God instead of ourselves, we see a whole different world. We see the world with different eyes. We see situations that come with acts of thankfulness, and even the bad ones, and the ways in which God protects. Now, maybe you're struggling this Christmas. A lot of people do. If you are, you're not alone. You're not unusual, and there isn't something wrong with you. You're human, just like Zechariah and Elizabeth were human. And sometimes a good wonder is a good thing. It makes us think. Now, I can't tell you there's a magic way out of whatever you're struggling with. And I can't tell you that, like Zechariah and Elizabeth, we can count on at the last minute something good's going to happen. I don't know that. I don't know that it won't happen. But I do know the one who does know, and that's God. And I'd like you to think about this idea as Advent comes. What do you think would happen if God told you everything up front? What kinds of things would you like answers to? Well, if you're like me, it has things to do with, well, what's going to happen next week? You get to be my age and you think, well, God, how many more years do I really have? I know there are a lot of people around here that are a whole lot older than I am, but there are a lot of people around here who have died a whole lot younger than I am. And I don't know what God's future holds. But I do know that if I will focus on Him, just like Elizabeth and Zechariah did, if I will do the best that I can to be blameless before God, then whatever happens is going to be a cause for joy. And I think that's true for you too. So as we end this week, have a great weekend. Think about these things. I look forward to talking with you again on Monday with another thought during this Advent season. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do everything we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thanks so much for listening. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.